I may not make it through the night. I may have 24/7 aid the rest of my life. Of course, with that, I will not finish school if that happens. There were so many things that happened where the odds were against me, but I literally refused to never give up. The road back, my TBI Recovery Journey. Hello, everyone. My name is Vincent A. Lanci, and I'm welcoming you back to another episode here on a mental health break. Remember to subscribe to stay current because I'll be launching a monthly series, a solo episode each month talking about my experience. And of course, we're starting at the hospital immediate aftermath. We're going to move into discharge and re-entry into the world, pivoting and finding a path forward, and how the lessons learned during this experience are still helping for me to be a person I am today. And like I said, today we're starting this road back, as I call it, with the immediate impact and silence, right? The hospital and immediate aftermath. We're going to talk about the trauma, initial chaos, and the fight for survival each day. And in case you're new to my story, you're listening to this show for the very first time, I'm going to welcome you. And my story in the mental health world, when I started really paying attention to it, came when I was walking home one evening. A car that left a bar hit me from behind on my walk, and the next thing you know, I wake up about a week later out of a coma. Where I got hit, I could have thrown a football to where I was living if I was a better athlete like that, of course. And coincidentally, I was hit at a police DUI checkpoint, meaning it's a hot spot for where drunk drivers drive, as it is coming from a street of restaurants and nightlife with bars. I could hear cars coming, but nothing right on top of me. And like I said, I woke up at Tampa General Hospital, who I'm a proud advocate for now, have traveled to the state capitol to share my story many times with them. And this police officer, he had two choices: chase down the individual who hit me or save my life. And I'm forever grateful he chose to save my life, because if another car or two had driven and not seen me and hit me, I undoubtedly would not be here today sharing my story in hopes of making your journey a little less hectic, a little less stressful, and help you get to where you want to go. Now, before I dive into the immediate wake up, right, as far as what I can remember, and I'll talk about a traumatic brain injury a little more in case it's your first time hearing it. My parents got a call in the middle of the night from a Tampa police officer saying something along the lines of, "Hello, is your son's name Vincent Lanci? If it is, you need to get down to Tampa immediately. He may not make it through the evening." I hope no parents ever have to receive that message. And at this time in 2013, there was only one flight from New York to Fort Lauderdale, and there was no direct flights from Tampa, meaning that my parents actually had to call the hospital to make sure I was still alive before boarding that plane to Tampa. This is before many things, right? Zelle and online money transfers and ease of finding money. So in the middle of the night, they had to scramble, made it down to me. And to this day, I don't remember seeing much of my visitors, dad, sister, anyone who came. My mom took a month off work to be with me as I was in the hospital for almost a month. And we'll get to a lot of that throughout this series of talks. And when I woke up, one of my first memories is the nurse asking me, "Hey, Vincent, which school do you go to?" Keep in mind as you listen that I was a 21-year-old finance student at the University of Tampa, one semester short of graduating, right, going into what's supposed to be one of the most exciting times of my life. My reply was, Pulaski Road Elementary School. Here I am, a 21-year-old finance student ready to graduate and take on the world, with a brain set so far back I thought I was back in kindergarten. So let's get into it. What is a traumatic brain injury? and you can find similar definitions across the web, but I'm going to do one from the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, and it's ninds.nih.gov. It says a traumatic brain injury refers to a brain injury that is caused by an outside force, and you may hear the acronym TBI. A forceful bump, blow, or jolt to the head or body can cause it, but not all blows or jolts to the head result in a TBI. An object entering the brain can also cause a TBI and are sometimes called brain injuries or even head injuries. Some types of TBI can cause temporary or short-term problems with brain function, including problems with how a person thinks, understands, moves, communicates, and acts. More serious TBIs can lead to severe and permanent disability and even death, which I'm thankful to God that this didn't happen to me. Some TBIs are considered primary, meaning the damage is immediate. Others can be secondary, meaning that they happen gradually over the course of hours, days, or weeks after the injury. And these secondary TBIs are the result of reactive processes that happen after initial head trauma, and mine was considered a severe TBI, keeping me in a coma for several days. Now, two broad types of TBIs. Penetrating TBI happens when an object pierces the skull, such as a bullet, shrapnel, or bone fragment, and it enters the brain tissue, and this type of TBI typically damages only part of the brain, where a non-penetrating TBI, also known as a closed head injury or blunt TBI, is caused by an external force strong enough to move the brain within the skull. Causes include falls, motor vehicle crashes, sports injuries, blast injury, or being struck by an object. And I'm sharing some more in case someone in your life has a TBI. Headache, dizziness, confusion, and fatigue. These are signs and symptoms of a TBI, and they tend to start immediately after an injury, but resolve over time. Emotional symptoms such as frustration and irritability tend to develop during recovery, and I sure will get into that a lot. Seek immediate medical attention if the person experiences any of these symptoms, especially within the first 24 hours of the head. This can be physical symptoms like a headache, convulsion or seizure, blurred or double vision, unequal eye pupil size or dilation, clear fluids draining from the nose or ears, nausea, vomiting, and new neurological problems like slurred speech is a sign, weakness of arms, legs, face, or even loss of balance. Now, as far as cognitive and behavioral symptoms of TBI, loss of or change in consciousness from anywhere from a few seconds to hours, decreased level of consciousness like it being hard to wake up, confusion and disorientation, which I'll get into a lot, problems remembering, concentrating, or making decisions, changes in sleep patterns, maybe a lot more, difficult falling asleep or staying asleep, and inability to wake up, frustration or irritability. And the last one I'll touch on here, just because I want to educate as much as I can, is the perception and sensation symptoms of TBI, lightheadedness, dizziness, vertigo, loss of balance and coordination, blurred vision, hearing problems, maybe ringing in the ears, unexplained bad taste in the mouth, sensitivity to light or sound, mood changes or swings, agitation, combativeness, or other unusual behavior. This is another area I will talk about and include mood changes or swings, agitation, combativeness, or other unusual behavior. Feeling anxious or depressed, those two things, and the mood changes I'll certainly touch on a lot, and fatigueness or drowsiness I'll dive into there too, including a lack of energy or motivation. I do want to dive into TBI in children as well, but before I get there, one of the most challenging parts of a traumatic brain injury is some things are day to day, some recoveries week to week, month to month, years to years, and we'll even get into this later on, but how I didn't notice a significant improvement in my memory for 6 years and all the work it took to get there. So in the hospital, I'm sharing this because there I didn't have a release date. Even when I, air quotes, graduated kindergarten, knowing my school name, there was so much uncertainty where I didn't have a release date. Now, this is in January, and if you're a Tampa local or Tampa native, or you've been to Tampa, you may have heard of Gasparilla. It's our version of Mardi Gras. The city unites, and it's a whole special festival throughout the whole city. And I was in the hospital at Tampa General Hospital watching the boats and the pirate ships go by and the floats and the festival where you start to put a different perspective on life, right? It's also a semester where our last one, we're making these memories with our lifelong friends. A lot's changed, but you have to start realizing what's really important in life. Now, before I swing back to my story, let's touch on here from the same source, TBI in children. Children might be unable to let their caregivers know that they feel different following a blow to the head. It's important for adults to pay attention to a child's behavior and ask about possible symptoms following a TBI. A child with a TBI may display the following signs or symptoms: changes in eating or nursing habits, persistent crying, irritability, or crankiness, specifically with an inability to be consoled, changes in the ability to pay attention, lack of interest in a favorite toy or activity, changes in sleep patterns or seizures, sadness, loss of a skill like toilet training, loss of balance or unsteady walking. We'll get into both of those in my story, and vomiting. I hope everyone found this part of the episode informative, just so we're all on the same page of what a traumatic brain injury is. And something that was important to me was never wanting pity or special treatment, being able to work my way back to where I need to be. And in life, whether it's a TBI or other adversity, we're going to be faced with it again and again and again. As sunny days come, we know rainy days follow, but it is important to remember it will not rain forever, to keep your head up and do what you need to get from point A to point B. And it's not looking at this end goal of me being fully recovered, which I never will be. It's okay. How do I get a little bit better than yesterday? It was never missing an appointment. It was never making an excuse, because I knew leaving Tampa in 82-degree weather and going back to New York with snow up to the doors, 28 degrees, flipping the thermometer, I wanted to get back, not let someone else's poor decision, someone who I've never met, ruin my light forever. And I'm still motivated by myself, not comparing my journey to others, because I didn't have the same journey. And it's important for everyone else to remember, someone may look like they're having a picture perfect life online, but chances are, and I've learned, those who try to be perfect don't really have it all together. So remember, worry about you and you'll find a lot more happiness. So I set the scene a little bit about what it looked like when I got hit. I learned in recovery that there's a part of your brain that blocks these bad memories, so I'll never recall it. I've tried to get in touch with, again, the police officer who saved my life when I was writing my first book, Left for Dead, to really just say thank you and give him the flowers. I know that's not why he did it, but he literally saved my life. So I was unable to do that. But of course, with the TBI, and we'll get into this a lot, not being able to separate dreams from reality, not knowing what's real, what's not. There's not much that was really clear in the beginning. Throughout this series of episodes, I'll share a lot about situations I thought were real and I imagined them, right? Whether I saw something on TV or I had a phone call, I had electronics privileges stripped because of the confusion it caused to my brain. So we'll get into all that. But again, severe TBI, the original diagnosis, I may not make it through the night. I may have 24/7 aid the rest of my life. Of course, with that, I will not finish school if that happens. There were so many things that happened where the odds were against me, but I literally refused to never give up. And as I signed a lot of my first book, Left for Dead, the quote was, "Tell me I can't, and I will." I was on a path to get back to where I was. And once we talk about recovery, we'll talk about the denial, right? Where I'm studying for the GMAT, the entrance exam for grad school, because I wanted more out of life. And I'm bombing them. I'm putting in tons of hours every day and I'm failing them because I didn't accept that my brain wasn't in the same position to retain information like I did, right? Where I had to read, write, type, and reiterate it again and again and again to retain a small amount of the information. But thankfully, my brain did stop bleeding and I did not need immediate surgery, where I unfortunately have friends who have suffered traumatic brain injuries and they had to have surgeries, and a lot of things could have gone really south, like not making it through the night. But eventually things did begin to shape for the better. And that's when I stopped living in denial, making excuses, and showing up to everything. If you try to put yourself in my shoes the best you can, please imagine the confusion, right? Something I didn't do wrong. I didn't go out looking for trouble, breaking the law. I woke up in the hospital with a traumatic brain injury and a broken leg. I had a broken fib, where if anyone knows of that, it's where a bone comes out of the leg and they have to straighten it out again with a rod. 2 bolts in my ankle, 2 bolts near my knee, and that will be forever. Certain things I can't do anymore, and I hate using the word can't, but the discomfort is too large with running. So I became a very avid biker, a lot of great bike trails down here in Florida, and just ways because exercise and fitness, wow, I can't power lift. I think that's a big misconception. Anything, taking walks, which is a big part of every day for me. Doing light weightlifting, sports, right? All of these things help improve my mental health. And I realized this was going to be more important and finding better ways than just medication. Now, medication is what many in this world improve with, right? So I'm not taking anything away from medication, but for me, I was thrown on a bunch of different types of pills for ADD, which I don't think I have. And I had depression pills, which I didn't think I have. And anxiety is something I'm open about dealing with, but I found myself living in a cloud. And I realized that if I don't get off these pills, eventually I will be lifelong dependent on it. So I had to find ways around that. And that was just one of the many challenges when I got out of the hospital. But while we're still here, we're in the hospital, right? I don't remember seeing some of my family members, but my mom was there and she took a lot of grunt of this where irritability, mood swings. These are things with a traumatic brain injury and why I coach parents and kids now to understand better what's happening. Because I had the best, and the best, I mean that, support and staff at Tampa General Hospital. But one thing I lacked was speaking to other traumatic brain injury survivors. So I'm hoping this series of episodes can serve as a light and comfort to anyone who is unfortunately also affected, a family who is unfortunately also affected. But it was only one way but up for me when the expectations are so low where you may not make it through the night. I was continuing to just challenge myself, and I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I had to do what I needed to get out of the hospital. I mentioned Gasparilla was around that time, so sure enough, the Super Bowl was. I watched the Super Bowl with a bunch of my close buddies, and I've got an awesome picture out there with it. And they brought PDQ, which was a new chicken joint at the time in Florida. Amazing chicken. I have no affiliation with them, but shout out to PDQ. They brought a bunch of tenders in there because, you know, what hospital food's like if you ever ate there, and TGH does the best they can in every area, but there's nothing like a meal compared to maybe hospital food. So TGH, before I jump back into the PDQ and Super Bowl, they've got a McDonald's, which love McDonald's. I'm a 90s baby, grew up on Happy Meals, and Starbucks. So eventually I would do anything I can for a McDonald's, right? And it is something I can laugh about now, but part of my daily routines was in the beginning, I would have someone come in and get me dressed, right? And the uncomfort in that is, as you can imagine, and eventually I'd want to play sleep to not get that happen. And I'll dive into that morning routine in a second, but my mom would say, Vin, if you wake up and go, I'll get you a Big Mac from downstairs. So that was always great. But back to the Super Bowl, having close friends who at the time, it was like family. I'm recovering from a brain injury and it's amazing. I got to have a bit of normalcy and have, until visitor hours were over, friends for the Super Bowl. Ray Lewis is my favorite non-Jet because I'm a big Miami Hurricanes fan. The intensity he plays with on the field is always inspiring to me as a leader who always wants to improve. So that was great. And it's just, again, something we take for granted, going to hang with our buddies to watch the Super Bowl. But now I'm fighting for my life in recovery in the hospital with no electronics. So having friends and the visitors, which we'll dive into over the course of this series, played a major role. So since I recently just talked about the McDonald's story, I think it's a great time here to dive into my early daily routine, right? Eventually in the next show, we'll get into some of the hallucinations and as the routine progressed, but it would start out with getting dressed by a complete stranger, right? And this isn't me staying in a hotel room, right? This is me in a hospital room that I eventually went room to room as recovery changes. I was eventually in a room with, I believe, 8 other beds where severe situations. Some patients, I remember talking to a wall during the evening. Lights on all night, TVs on all night that aren't your TV. So there was a lot of challenges there. So I'd wake up if I slept, get dressed, and I would wheel down to physical therapy. There I would do things like the arm bicycle. And if you follow me on social media, you've seen stuff about this. Very tedious task. Once I graduated kindergarten again, right? Those air quotes. Riding an arm bicycle is very tedious and frustrating. So once I slowly evolved in recovery there, it made a great deal. And after that, I went back to my bed. I had every type of therapy, you name it, had great speech therapists, occupational therapists, rebuilding daily parts of life that, again, took for granted. I wish this upon no one. this situation where I learned I'm going to sit and sulk and cry, why me, or I'm going to turn the worst day into something positive and hopefully inspire people along the way through my story. And when that part of this journey comes, I'll talk about starting to speak when I did realize my story was bigger than me. How, again, something I wish I had was more interactions with TBI patients. So that's one of my main motivations here today. Before I sign off here, right, let's continue on this daily battle for the basic, right? Adopting these first steps of relearning life, physical therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and the emotional drain of daily repetitive work, which is a part of life normally, took a big toll on me, where a lot of naps sunk in, and eventually we'll get into something I teased earlier where my sleep levels were off. Even when I got out of there, I mean, even to today, I'm a 4 a.m. riser. Never giving up on yourself is something I hope to push as a message through this, where we all battle different adversity. None is more significant than others. It's helping each other get through that. And it's what I hope a mental health break is doing for us. And on the next episode, I'm going to dive more into my hospital stay leading up to the release and some of the early areas of release, right? Discharge not fixed. What my first day back home was like, how it's an invisible injury, a traumatic brain injury, right? Where once you heal and my face is no longer purple from the accident, it gets a little better, right? Where we have to learn and to deal with things like my non-physical problems, in addition to practicing walking on a wall, the fatigue, the noise sensitivity, the struggle of reading sentences, to reconcile with the fact that I'm a 21-year-old student with a current reality. There's a lot of grief in that process, so I'm going to go over all of that and this identity crisis. Eventually, we'll get back into returning to campus, finding my voice, living that new normal, and all the way up till today. My name is Vincent A. Lanci, and I want to thank you so much for tuning in. And please remember to subscribe to stay current, leave a review, and share with someone who would find value in this show. With that, I'm signing off today, right here on A Mental Health Break. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. I would love to hear your feedback. What did you love? What do you want to see more of? Are there any questions you would like me to ask the guests who come on the show? This show is not possible without you, the amazing listeners, so please email us at podcastsbylanci@gmail.com and let us know what you think. We'll also feature you on a later show. Please remember to subscribe to stay current with our amazing community of guests who will continue to come on the show, sprinkled in with solo episodes from me, Vincent A. Lanci. With that, I look forward to introducing more shows to you each and every week. And with that, we're signing off today. Enjoy the episodes and make it a great day ahead.